All right, welcome back to the build, everybody. It is early spring in New Jersey. The last update I provided was back in the fall, and I have been working on the car over the winter. It's been going a little slower than I wanted to, and I've been working on a lot of odds and ends that just don't lend themselves to putting out an interesting video. And I'd rather have fewer videos that have some meaningful content. In this video, we are going to cover the main fuses and power cables on the SLC chassis. This will be probably part one of a three-part series to walk you through the thought process and how I am going about putting the electrical in this car. So if this is of interest to you, stick around and stay tuned. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about fuse and fuse strategy. So, when putting this together, I decided to use the AIM PDM 32, and that's a solid state power distribution module. It's got 32 outputs, and as you saw in a prior video, it just does a ton of stuff as well as drive the instrument cluster for the car. So I thought that was a great choice. However, you still have to surround that with a number of fuses depending upon what you want to put in the car. So let's talk a little bit about these components. Let's see, left to right, this is a marine rated battery fuse block, and then this is a combination MIDI I think it's ATO fuse block. And I bought these specific products because they're just really compact. There's just so little room to play with, and I had to find fuses that would protect everything I want to protect and also fit in the car. So let's talk about, I guess, the individual circuits. So the battery is actually going to connect to this marine rated fuse block over there, and then this wire here connects to a 200 amp fuse, and that will connect to the alternator. Next to it is a 250 amp fuse, and that is actually going to connect to this, what I call a master fuse block. And then lastly, this connects to the starter. So the alternator, the master fuse block, and the starter are all protected by fuses. And now this master fuse block, basically this pink fuse will connect to the PDM. So the PDM can handle 125 amps of current, but I've got some other high current item things that I didn't want to power with the PDM. So for example, up top, I have two 30 amp fuses. Each one will go to one of the front radiator fans. And then I have two extra blade fuses, and one will probably power the alarm system because that's always on. And the other one will probably power the door locks. And then over here, we've got a 60 amp fuse, which will power the car amplifier. And then we have a 40 amp fuse, which will power the electric power steering. Okay, and that's sort of the point. This will sit in the front of the car. That will sit right next to the battery. They're nice and compact, and as far as brands go, this is a marine system made by Blue Sea Systems, and this is an automotive system made by Little Fuse. Now, it turns out, I believe that Little Fuse is the manufacturer and Blue Sea sort of packages their products up. So, for example, Little Fuse sells this, but it doesn't come with the cover. And then Blue Sea also sells this item with a clear cover, but actually the power rating is slightly different. I think the power rating on this is maximum power, and the power rating that Blue Sea advertises is continuous power. But anyway, I bought this one from Blue Sea, this one from Mauser Electronics, and they sell everything that Little Fuse builds. Okay, well, here's a good sample of the supplies I used for this task. I bought all these products from a company called CE Auto Electric Supply, and I highly recommend them. They have a really nice selection of products, and all these products are of high quality. They're not the least expensive, but I think it's well worth it. Let's talk about the cabling a little bit. So I'm using a 1/0 cable, and this is, a thick cable. It's going to be able to handle about 350 amps, not that it will need to, but a maximum up to the front of the car. So that's a 1/0. It's going to connect the battery to the master fuse. Then we have a 2-gauge wire, which will connect the battery to the starter and the battery to the alternator. And then we have 4-gauge wire that will connect the master fuse to the PDM and also the master fuse to the stereo amplifier. Then I purchased these lugs. They're called mega lugs. And they have all different, you can see they have all different shapes and sizes with different size holes depending upon what you're connecting them to. They also sell a 45 at a 90-degree angle, but like this one I bent up a little bit. You could put this in a vise with a heat torch, and I just put a little stud in there and pull it over, and actually can make these into 45-degree angles and save some money. Then they have a nice selection of boots depending upon the size wire and the item that you're connecting to. And then they sell the super thick, heavy-duty shrink wrap, which I really like. So I just bought a collection of them, and these are the supplies we're going to use. All right, so next we'll look at the crimping tool, and we'll start to crimp and lay these cables out. Okay, well, this is the first cable we are going to crimp, and this will be a grounding cable. It'll ground the frame to the battery. We're not going to need the entire length. This is a 2-gauge wire. But in order to crimp these mega lugs onto the cable, you need a crimper. So I purchased this inexpensive crimper from Amazon. The brand is AMZ CNC. And the largest size die is a 2/0. The smallest die is a 12-gauge wire. And this works really well. It also comes with a wire cutter, and it cuts the wire like butter. I was surprised. I can cut the 1/0 cable with no issue whatsoever. And basically, I simply, take the lug and sort of figure out where I need to cut it. So I'll use a marker and mark it, and then I'll use a utility knife and cut around the casing. All right, so we're going to prepare one end of this cable to be crimped, and then we'll take a look at it. Okay, well, we got the casing cut off. Now I'm just going to put a zip tie to hold these strands nice and tight, and then I'll slip this over and cut this off, and then we'll crimp this. Okay, so anyway, I just used the zip tie. I push it towards the end. I slip this over, and then I'll get some clippers and I'll clip this off. And then we'll crimp this up, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so anyway, the first crimp is going to go here. In each of these lugs, they're big enough to put 2 crimps on. So anyway, you'll take a look when I finish this one up. Okay, so this is as far as the die is going to go. You can actually see a little bit of the mega lug squeezes out the side, and I grind those down. But anyway, I guess these are a little oversized, so you get that effect, but you'll see it crimps it really well. Okay, well, there's the first crimp, and you can see, how it squeezes the sides. It's a tiny bit sharp there, so I just sand that down a bit. So we're going to do one more on this side, and then we can put the heat shrink tubing on. Okay, second crimp is done. So you can see I ground it down. You can see the copper. But anyway, that's not coming out. That's pretty good. All right, we'll put the heat shrink on, and then we'll do the other side. Okay, So we got the heat shrink on. Yeah, I like this heat shrink. It's really extra thick. You can see the glue that keeps the moisture out of the connection of the crimp. So anyway, really nice products. So I'm going to mount this on the frame, and then we'll measure the other side, and then we'll finish this particular cable up. Okay, well, 1 down and 4 to go. Basically have 1 more ground cable and then 3 power cables. But this is a nice custom cable. I mean, you know, I bent this at 45 degrees. This one I bent up just a little bit here to clear the battery case. And then I added this boot just because, just to maybe add a little protection from that screw so I don't short circuit something. But anyway, I'm going to put this on the car. I'll make the rest of the cables and then we'll see how it all turned out. Okay, well, this will be the next to last video. You can see the long main power cable that feeds the master fuse block. It's going to sit inside the interior tub, but I do have that removable panel, so this is all accessible and serviceable, and I can replace these cables if for some reason I need to. Okay, we'll walk around the side and we'll take a look at the battery cables. All right, this is a little hard to video, but I'll do my best. And on this angle, you can see the marine rated fuse block sitting on top of the battery. I made a little bracket. And then you can see the, that's the ground cable that we made in this episode. We got a second ground cable. That one goes to the engine block. The one we made goes to the chassis. And then if we do the aerial view here, you can see the main, the main power cable connecting the battery to the marine rated fuse block, and then the first cable that attaches to the bulkhead. All right, so that's sort of the setup here. I still have to run the starter cable and the alternator cable, but I'll do that at some point. All right, but anyway, it's sort of nice because I have complete access to those, visual and physical, in case I need to inspect the fuses or replace them. That's good. And then lastly, there's the master fuse block over there. And those fuses are easily accessible as well. Everything I'm gonna mount from an electrical standpoint has to be easily accessible. All right, so let's see, I'll leave you with a view of the LT4 engine with the dashboard hanging off the back. But anyway, as always, thanks for watching and take care.